I'm Simon Flagg, the CEO of Wathaurong Aboriginal Co-op, and welcome to Kitchen Table Podcast, where we talk about community, culture and voice. Stay tuned, follow us on our socials, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. So we're back at Wathaurong's Kitchen Table Podcast, and we've got a special guest with us today. It's a real privilege for us. It's a young community man we've all known our whole life and seen him grow up, and now represents us on the Treaty Assembly and doing great work and a representative for the Barn Southwest, and has taken on a new youth portfolio. And so we welcome Geordie Edwards to the podcast.
Thank you all.
So Geordie, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, I'm a Kirra Waddawurrung, Waddawurrung, Waddawurrung and Arrernte man. Kirra and Waddawurrung down Gunditjmara, part of the Ma Nation. Waddawurrung here, so those are both my father's sides. And Arrernte on my mother's side up in Alice Springs. My grandfather Trevor helped start this place here, Waddawurrung, with the rest of my uncles and aunties, and so got a long-standing connection, obviously with Waddawurrung. So third generation now, worker, I should say. And it'll most likely be fourth generation coming with my kids. So I love this place, and unfortunately I just had the farewell today, so just to start the new treaty job as a youth convener as well as a Southwest member.
So tell us about that. What is your role in treaty, and what are the functions you're going to play in that space?
So I've been involved in treaty, since the first statewide, I shouldn't say first statewide, but the last statewide meetings that we had back in 2015, 2016, 2017, that time period. Pop dragged me along to those meetings, and at the convention centre as well as the MCG or Marvel, and that really sparked my interest. Pop was, and Mum and Dad were there as well, and Pop would say, "Oh, go sit on that table, see what they're saying. Make them a cuppa and tell me what they're saying." So I was this little spy and didn't really understand what they were talking about at that point, but man, it was some good conversations, and even though they were fiery, but it was just a lot of passion, and I just loved it. I loved that energy. I loved that rawness to it, and at the time they wanted the recognition and the constitution. They said, "No, we want treaty now here," and that's how the ball got rolling. And so just sparked my interest, and then the community assembly came around for to work out kind of how we can do the voting, and there was like a small framework to help to put to the interim treaty working group to then set up the assembly what it is now. And so I put my hand up for that, and that was my first time actually being a part of something like that, and I was freshly 18 then, so I was the youngest there, and that was really awesome to see everybody on there from all different parts to learn, understand from those mobs, the older generations and elders that were in those rooms. And then I eventually put my hand up for the interim treaty working group, which I got on, and then just rolled over. I just kept rolling over, and then I had a bit of a leeway, and then until the time period of when Jill Gallagher set up the commission to then what the assembly is now. So I've been involved for a long time, and since I was 18, and then the past 3 years, really trying to get a youth youth voice up, to make sure that young fellas understand the pros and cons and the processes of treaty. That was my really big push, and it finally got through in, I would say, the last 7 months of the previous iteration of the assembly. And then when I got back on, I was voted up again to be the youth chair. So all my role is not only with the Southwest, is to make sure the Southwest communities from Geelong or Werribee River up to Ballarat all the way through to the SA border are informed, understand, but also participate in the process. Whether they like the process or not is irrelevant, as long as they're participating, so they can tell us if it's not going good or if it is going good, and but also contributing, some outcomes of treaty. What are some outcomes of treaty and how that could look, and so really that's going to be the main focus. And then the youth role on top of that, again, getting young followers to understand the process of treaty, the histories of treaty, but also now the futures of treaty. I think we're lucky here in Victoria and in Australia that we kind of can see the future a little bit in terms of we've seen previous iterations of treaties all across the world that have been around for a long, long time. So we can kind of see what pros and cons we can get out of treaties and things that we can go down. Make sure young fellas get that understanding is the most important thing. So then they can have an educated decision on if this is what they think is right for them, for their potential kids, potential grandkids, and the future generations. They can then understand that. But making sure the histories of treaty in the conversation within Victoria and Australia, they understand that it's not just been since 2015 or 2016. That it's been a long-standing conversation since invasion here in Australia and in Victoria.
Yeah, wow.
So it sounds fun.
So how is the system embracing the process of community coming together to discuss treaty and the formation of treaty? How is the state government responding?
Well, it's different, obviously, in different areas, but I think the state government, they've done things, very strategic. They've created this system, so they know the system better than anyone, and they've definitely been gearing up, with their constituents, while also their parliamentary members, and training them up, going through treaty courses, what are, like I said, pros and cons, what they can and can't, and what's their jurisdictions. So they've been gearing up more than what we have been, and that's because they've been playing the game longer. So all they have to do is gear up their warriors, where we have to get community to understand the process of treaty, because treaties are a legal document in their system. It's not our document, as such. They've set that up a long time ago. So, I think, in terms of that, we're a bit behind, but doesn't mean that we're not going to be ready when we come to the table. In terms of them supporting our communities get together, it's not necessarily their job. That's where the Assembly needs to step up. We've already been having discussions about more statewide meetings, more big regional community meetings to actually get our community informed, but also try and get their minds ticking and realise treaty can come around pretty quick, and we can gear up as much as possible and get ourselves educated, not just the waffle way, but make sure our cultural knowledge is up to scratch when we come to the table. Make sure that we stand in our law and sovereignty, and making sure that's what we're coming with, that power, and that it's not underneath anything. It's we know that is the be all end all. And this other system is come along trying to assert their sovereignty. So we need to make sure that this agreement is on a respectful level, but make sure that we don't diminish our law for theirs.
What are you finding fascinating about the treaty?
I just like those type of conversations. I love those type of rows. I love those type of heated discussions where passion is just there. It's raw emotion. But also we get a lot of followers that are smart in a lot of other areas, may not necessarily be cultural areas, but systems and legislation and acts and things like that are really crucial too, to understand the enemy. So I really like those discussions, broadening my mindset, so then I can help deliver it to, again, young followers, deliver it to my kids, and break it down structurally so they can understand, because there's so much legal jargon within it. But I just really like these type of discussions and actually trying to figure out what type of outcomes we would want.
And how are you finding the legal jargons?
Gosh, it's too much. It's too much. There's I got to commend, Pop was like a wizard, He was a wizard in legislation and acts. It's like he could recite off the back. Just recite it, and like it was a song. So I give respect to that whole generation, really. They just learnt it. But trying to understand the legal jargon, it is difficult. But I read it a couple of times and kind of get the gist of it, and then try and break it down and make sure that I'm within that. Make sure I can move within that, and how we can manipulate it to our advantage. So I like it.
This is the second term of the Treaty Assembly. How long do you go for?
So we got 3 years.
Yep.
My role as a youth convener is only 18 months, so all the roles, co-chairs, the other chairs of the other committees, the board, it's all up for revision in 18 months.
By whom? Who's revising it? Who's reviewing
The
it?
assembly. So if we feel like the co-chairs or me as a youth convener or the elders' voice, they're not. We don't feel like they're meeting, or doing the job properly. We can vote up a whole new board, whole new co-chairs, whole new chairs for the other committees, which is good. I feel like compared to the last iteration, we didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a improvement. But you're still on the assembly, but in 18 months we all may have another 2 co-chairs. We may have a whole new board, so which is pretty exciting. I think that's a exciting thing to have. But we got three years to progress this conversation. I know the assembly have been, they're saying, we could have a treaty at the end of the 3 years. I feel like that could be a bit rushed. But they're definitely pushing for we could actually have a statewide treaty within 3 years. But I would like to get our nations our sovereign nations up to scratch before that kind of occurs. Because a lot of our ACOs are kind of doing a lot of statewide discussions anyway. But it won't necessarily harm it either if we did. But I just feel like it'll be a bit rushed. I don't want anything to be rushed. I know it's going to take a long time, and I know it's gonna be a lot of discussions, and we can't settle. We've got to make sure that we can't settle. So, 3 years.
Okay. What about the unregistered Aboriginal parties?
Yeah, well, that's again, out of the gate, Uncle Gary Murray was. He was straight onto it and has really pushed already to make sure that our criteria we thought was good enough. We thought, we got to put a couple different barriers, make sure that not anybody can just do it. But then it's like we realised we put too many barriers, and hence why Wamba Wamba didn't get up. And so we need to make sure that all those other communities have the ability to go up if they choose. In terms of there's I think with that discussion, it's like the whole Gunditjmara. We've only got 2 seats, but really there's on the east side of Gunditj, there's 7 different language groups. On the west side, there's about 4 different language groups. So does that mean the whole of Gunditjmara Nation now gets 11 seats just in the west, or do we stay with the 2 registered Aboriginal parties there, or we may, as a self-determining mob, may decide, well, in the east side of Gunditj, well, we've got 13 different family groups. We have 13 seats because we got. So I think it gets a bit confusing. I think people need to understand that whole conversation, like how broad we're going with it. But in terms of like Wamba, like I voted yes for Wamba. Yeah, I'm an Edwards, so it's like they needed to be there. They'd already put that up. But there are other mobs that aren't in the same situation as like Gunditj, for example, that do need to, if they choose to be there, they should have that seat. They have that right. I think that would just strengthen the assembly anyway.
But that sort of is old legislation being still put into a new legislation.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the reason that Weber didn't get up, they got majority, but it didn't meet the Corporations Act in terms of a supermajority. So it was like, well, we're meant to be self-determining here, but we're still being determined by the acts that we're limited by because we're technically a corporation. So it's a sovereignty, and we're going to have a Utah community meeting tomorrow, which is our cultural governance, and that will be sovereignty's main thing. We already had in our treaty committee meeting, and that was that conversation was a long day. So people actually understand the legal ramifications of what it means to be sovereign, and that's going to be a really big key discussion. And self-determining, what does that mean? If we're really self-determining, well, we shouldn't be bound by the Corporations Act, or we shouldn't be bound by all these acts that we are currently bound by. So we need to, people need to unpack it properly and understand that it's more than just saying that we're self-determining, or it's more than just saying that we're sovereign, because there's a whole range of things that we need to actually act if we want our proper autonomy.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, like obviously for yourself, you came into this space very young, being the youngest assembly member as 18, and you've gone into
I'm still the youngest.
Still the youngest. And you've gone into a space, like you said, it is very complicated and complex and the likes. What's the general view of the youth across the states perspective around treaty? Do they generally understand it? Have they got opinions on what they want to see and hear? And now you've created a platform for those voices to come. Like, how do you see their impact actually helping changes? Because ultimately, I look and think the treaty is going to benefit their generations, and we're taking those steps to help that. But how do we make sure their voice is in it? Because they're the ones that are going to be living with it.
Yeah, so we've been to the went to Warrnambool for the southwest communities, where we had mobs from the whole southwest area come to Warrnambool and discuss, and they were really, really engaging in terms of their understanding of treaty. It was like, oh yeah, we want treaty, but we actually don't know what it means. We don't know, what that means to actually have a treaty, and the benefits and the cons of treaty, and the baggage that it comes with, as well as the benefits. So, that was it was eye opening, because I've been in the space for a long time, so I think it's common knowledge, but that was an eye opening thing. I was like, oh, okay, all right, well, maybe we just need to get fellas' minds ticking especially for this first 12 months. Or first couple of months that I was in that role, in that previous iteration. Then we went to Bendigo, and there wasn't too much uptake, and we thought, okay, well that's eye opening. Why is there no uptake in Bendigo, or in that? I think Bendigo falls in north east, maybe northwest. It gets a bit because they're in the middle. And then we went up to Shep, and we had heaps of kids. So it was like, okay, but again, it was like the Southwest. We had a bit more knowledge on how to deliver it and how to get that message across. But again, it was like we kind of have to start from scratch on what that means. So I think that's going to be really important. My first 12 months is like trying to get our young people's minds ticking. But I think once they get it, once they understand the whole ramifications of treaty, they'll be flying. I mean, the past, ever since COVID, even just before COVID, the whole climate change was led by youth. The Black Lives Matter movements was led by youth. All these different movements that have been happening have been led by youth and young followers all across the world. So young people's access to knowledge these days is unlimited with your phone. And so there's everything out there. And I think once they get the understanding of treaty and when they break it down properly, I think we'll be in a much better area, because we think a lot different to the generations before us, because we've got so many different access to different people all across the world that we can learn from. That was older generation had to read from a book, or when we can just go, oh yep, who did that? Yep, okay. You got the Constitution, or you've got the Treaty of Waitangi in your hand in a matter of seconds. So it's I think once they get the understanding, that it's going to be booming, I think.
So at the end of your 3-year term, what is an achievement you want to be able to stand there and say, we achieved that?
Well, we've got a plan for the youth convener role. Hopefully we can get through our engagements and activities, through all of our different forums. We're going to have all different youth forums all across the state and different communities, and they will, out of those activities, they'll write their 5 different priorities in all different generations too. Because we've got a 12-year-old doesn't think like an 18-year-old, an 18-year-old doesn't think like a 25-year-old or a 28-year-old. Those are all the different youth brackets. So, they'll write down those priorities after we do those events, put them all on possum skin cloaks, and hopefully have a massive possum skin cloak that has the priorities of our young people in the state over those 3 years. That could potentially lay out, well, these are our negotiations. These are our actual outcomes that we want for treaty. So I think that would be pretty cool. I would also want to, I love the KYC model where they have the execs, but have our own treaty, kind of champions in those areas, in all the different towns and all the different communities, all the different nations, all across the state, where they're potentially already the next iteration of the assembly, with the proper knowledge, the nous of what they want, what we need as a sovereign community. So I think those are my main things. I think to get our I don't really care if people are enrolled or if I'm not too fussed about that. I just want to make sure our community and young mob are educated enough in this space, because it will impact them in some way, shape or form. And, we do want the right people, our best warriors there, So, and I know young followers, once they get the gist of it, they'll be there. So, I think those are my, it'd be cool to see a big possum skin cloak, while it, with all different nations and communities and kids, with 5 priorities or priorities that they want from their community. Because it's going to be very, very different from Mildura to Gippsland to the west to the metro. So I think that would be pretty cool.
It'd be very powerful.
How can the youth part of the assembly work closely with the elders group?
Well, we're about to do a roadshow, our 3 different forums in Mildura, Swan Hill and Robinvale in the next couple of weeks. And that's a joint one with the elders. So, the elders, from its inception, always said we want the youth to be a part of this. We just need to make sure how how we could make it possible, really. So this is our first time where we're going to all do a joint one together, which is pretty cool. And I think it'll be good for communities to get their young followers to re-engage with elders, and the elders to re-engage with young people as well. We've also we proposed it last time, but Indy Clark helped propose it for this iteration, that we have like a mentorship, and we kind of modelled that off Yulunj from Bunjalaka in the Melbourne Museum there. And Yulunj, when I was working at Bunjalaka, the Yulunj, the elders group, or the knowledge holders for Bunjalaka that help guide the museum with all their cultural artefacts and their stories that they put out, make sure it's culturally appropriate. They also had like a mentor program within that they helped set up themselves. They said, and it was pretty much we just bring one person, a young person from our community that will be the next version of us. So I thought that I've really liked that model, and I think we can easily relay that out within the assembly. And Indy's mind for that stuff is really good, being the former CEO. I know that's not the title, but the former CEO of KYC, Korea Youth Council. Of even if it's non-voting members, but to get young followers to actually understand, be in those environments. I said in my speech, I bring my kids to most of my meetings so they can just be around it, because they're subconsciously picking it up, whether they're playing or doing whatever, because that's what we did. And so young people, can be in that environment so they can understand those type of conversations that are going on. They can also understand, okay, when to pick your time to talk, when not to talk, when to properly listen to certain people talking, and pick apart. You can pick apart people's egos within their truth that they're talking. So you get to learn all that, and I think that's where it benefited me these past 3.5 years, because I can now learn from that, and I know if everybody had the same opportunity that I did, our young followers would be at a much better level in terms of understanding this. So that's another program that I would like to see, and that we're trying to implement. Again, we're just working out the logistics of it, but I think that will be a thing that we get up to, which will be pretty cool. And then, those we bring one person each. That will then spark a trail of like, they'll bring 2 people each. They then bring another 2 people, and it grows, and then you're not just teaching that one person, you're teaching 30 and vice versa. So, that's where I think young fellas can also play a big part too.
Yeah, great. One last question from me, and it's really important and powerful work you're doing. It's a heavy load as well, not just for yourself, but for all the other assembly members. So what do you do to keep yourself grounded and look after yourself after doing all these heavy listings? Like, what brings you back to your centre and with your family and keeps your health and well-being strong? Because as we're seeing with the voice and treaty and other things, it's a heavy load we have to carry and walk with. So what are you doing for yourself? I think it's important for our community, for us to hear tips and advice around how you look after yourself.
I think having good mentors is a really big thing. Having good mentors, obviously it's hard to find someone that is your person, but I have a lot of mentors in many different areas that help me in many different spaces. So I do have one that in like this corporate space, but also I got cultural mentors. They can be men, women, they can be older, younger. It doesn't really matter as long as you have somebody that's kind of been in those type of shoes, that knows type of questions or can calm you down in a way that like Alkamukai Bell is really good for me in terms of when I'm thinking, we got so many things we could do this, just relax, just calm down, You've got plenty of time for that. Yes, we need to take our time and get that patience. So there's a lot of I have a lot of mentors. So I think that's a really good thing. That way you kind of ground yourself. you got to get people that will also humble you in those type of spaces too. So some people that can be like, you're getting a bit ahead of yourself, just relax. But me as well, I like to, just go out on my country. So, from on Waddawurrung country, I got my own spaces that I just go, and it's just for me, and have a fire and do a smoking both before and after I leave that place, or if I'm staying the night, just camp under the stars. Those are certain places within Wathaurong country I go, certain place in Gunditjmara country that I go. Because sometimes I need the river, sometimes I need the coast, sometimes I need the desert on my mum's side. Just costs too much to go up there right now. But when I do, there's certain places out there that I go to, because I do need the desert for certain healings, and I have yarns with certain people out there, and certain people on Gunditj country, certain people here on Waddawurrung country. So those are my things. Going out on country and just being, no technology. Sometimes I have the kids with me and my wife. Good family time, and that's healing within itself. Sometimes with the cousins and family members, sometimes with dad, sometimes with mum, and sometimes I just need, it's just me, So having those different scenarios, when to know is up to you, I know when I need certain spaces with different people or just myself, and then having the fire going as well. So normally it's near water. Normally for me it's the river. But when I come back from the desert, I was like, I need the coast. I needed something that was, because it was too hot up there for some things. So I was like, I need the coast. So, but yeah, me, I'm more on the river. But the ocean does a lot of things too. Like the ocean is very, very calming. Hearing the flow of the river, going over rocks, or the waterfalls up in Waddawurrung country, or whatever it may be, whatever suits you or floats your boat. And we're lucky here in Victoria that we've got every kind of ecosystem. So it doesn't matter if you're from the desert, you can just go to Mildura, or it doesn't matter if you're from the rainforest, you go to Otways, or so every nation kind of has it here in Victoria, which we're very, very lucky. We're not every place, every state has that. And we're very, very fortunate that we do. But those are my things: going out on country and just being. And no technology, that's the main thing. Yeah. Try and go somewhere where there's just no access in general. No access to internet or Wi-Fi or anything like that. But just being on country is my main one. Yeah.
So you have to rely on our telepathy.
Yeah, I have to, just being, and feeling those spirits, feeling the country, underneath my feet, or sitting down or laying down on country. That's mine.
So, sorry, this will be my last question for it, because it has come out through you. Anytime I think anybody talks to you, one of the things I think they will say to you, culture just oozes out of you. It's part of who you are, and that's clear. But you had a bit of a celebrity moment there, not through yourself, but through your son, and the dancing and whatnot you have been teaching him, and how much he loves culture, which is, for me, just an expression of you. How'd it feel seeing your son explode on the internet like that, and having the culture be what he was celebrated for, and seeing him just practice what you've been teaching him since he was born?
Yeah, it was a crazy moment, because it was just a collage of videos and pictures that my cousin Bree put up. So and that was kind of like stuck in the middle, but everyone loved it and just shared it and just went viral, mega viral. So we had CEOs of clothing companies calling us, and other news agencies. One day he was on Play School, and all these other things, but it was like, just got too much, It was like, he's only 3, he needs to, I've been dancing my whole life, he needs to earn his way first. So,
who shakes a better leg, him or you now?
Me, always. But, No, he was it was pretty special, and you know, not too many people. A lot of the Gunditj followers picked it up. When he did the dance, he said "kawa," and "kawa" means dance or ceremony, and so that was they were spinning out more so on that, and then it just kept going and going, and it's pretty cool to see how many people loved it, and had grown men and big lawmen too. Like could you take a photo of me and Mandara here? So, all right, yep. I mean, I taught him, but okay, I dance. I dance at the MCG. Like, no, they, grown men taking photos. Oh, the kids are gonna love this, and he became our own little celebrity within that. And he did a couple. He did one before that went just locally viral, and did one at the carnival that got a little bit viral. So I think he's just known for dancing now, lad. So he loves it, and now he's trying to teach his little brother and his little sister, and they'll get there. But he's pretty deadly out there. I think he's just got it. He's just got it. So
how does that make you feel?
Yeah, no, it's good. We knew. Me and his mum, Palawa woman. So we knew culture has to be ingrained within them. They're going to go to school and all these things that are going to try and filter all that out. We have to make sure that he's surrounded by culture everywhere, no matter what. So teaching them language since they were born, both Waddawurrung language and Kire Pikwadong languages. So that's been cool for the family, because now the whole family just uses that language. Like the co-op here, now we just use language, and it's just second to none to us now. Like of just simple hello and goodbyes, even on our email signatures. So within the assembly, like I was the first one in our first inaugural speech, in our first iteration, to use language within Parliament. By the end of our closing speech, everybody used language in their speeches. Same for this one. It's like now everyone's using language, so it's just a good ripple effect. So it makes me proud that we know, okay, well, we're doing something right here with these kids, and it's very easy to teach kids. They're a lot easier to teach them than adults. So it's like they pick language up very, very easily. They pick dancing up very easily. Beats, songs, comes natural to them because their minds are very easy to manipulate. So, but we try to make sure that we've got to keep them strong, who their mobs are. So every day, tell me who your mob are, tell me your totems,
Absolutely.
and every time we're driving, through countries, okay, past certain river, do we know where we are? Do we know what country we're on? Oh, yep. Oh, we're going into, they know, on the Geelong side of the Hopkins, driving into Warrnambool. Oh, yeah, we're on Kire country. As soon as we cross the river, what country we're on? Oh, we're on Pikwadong country. So it's slowly, it's slowly getting there, and just ingrain it in them. And that, I think it just makes me happy that, I wish, my grandfather was here to see that, and grandmother were here to see that, Nan got to see a little bit that, they're using language, they're strong, Nan being a Stolen Gen woman, and but I would love to see Pop to see that, the language program that he first started here is now instilled in his great grannies, so, it makes me happy that they're strong, and, he asks all cousins that are his age or that he's playing with, and in Warrnambool, whatever, any Aboriginal person, what's your totem? What's your totem? Or who's your mob? So it's good that they've now started to pick that up. We're now teaching him the handshake, so he's got a little hand, so it's hard to his whole hand wraps around my thumb, so it's like no, you got to do it like that, go in different stages. So. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. I like that he's. I love that they're culturally strong. Started with their naming. All got language names, and so it's just from birth. So it's strong. It helps this community, helps their Gunditjmara community, helps their Arrernte communities, helps their Palawa communities by them just being. So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us. It's been a privilege to get to know you more. We've all known you since you were born, but I think I learned a bit more about you than I already knew, which is great. And I don't think I speak out of turn, but we'd love to get you back and have more chats around where treaty's at and what you want to discuss with the community in the Barn Southwest. But yeah, thanks for being part of it and sharing your story and where we're going in treaty.
Thank you, and it's really good. I'm glad we were talking about this room in itself used to be the radio room, and bringing that back to in this modern version. I don't think many people listen to radio anymore, but in a podcast form, I think this is a really important space that we can highlight our community, because we're so big now, and a lot of good people doing some good things all across this community. So be more than happy to come back and update everyone on where the treaty process is. I'll be on the road anyway to be doing that, but to have this platform, it would be really special to be able to come back and talk about this process and what else we're doing. So exciting times, I think. Glenn?
Just one question before we go. What's non-negotiable?
For different mobs, I can't speak on other communities, so whatever their non-negotiables are, is their non-negotiables. We haven't had a conversation within this community to see what our non-negotiables are yet. In terms of statewide, I don't even think we've had we've just said everything's on the table right now. We do know our jurisdiction, so we know anything federal is out of bounds. So kind of know our limits in terms of that. But
and freehold.
And a freehold, yeah. So all of that. We actually just put in we're just actually having a conversation with putting up some sort of proposal to somehow, or to put to the Commonwealth government, the federals, that to stop selling Crown land under communities' noses, because that's what they are doing, selling Crown land.
But didn't the state government do that prior to the first development of the assembly?
Not really. So we need to, because they're just selling our land, and a lot of Chinese companies are buying farms in the Western District, and all these other private drillings and things like that. So, but in terms of non-negotiables, again, I don't think we've really had a conversation yet on what are the absolute non-negotiables. I think that will come. I think I'll have a better answer in 12 months, because I think we'll have some pretty heated discussions on what that possibly could be. So,
And your pop would and will be very proud.
Thank you.
Absolutely, he would be proud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, brother.